Had we let these firms fail, the immediate impact would have been more severe, right? But the politicians have no stomach for that, right? All they care about is, well, we might not get reelected if we let all that happen now, so let's postpone it. Even if we make it much worse, just so long as it's worse after the next election, we'll deal with it then. That's the attitude that has to stop. We can't keep trading short-term gain for long-term pain, because you know what? It's almost a long-term, and it's going to be excruciating pain if we don't do the right thing soon.
One more question right here.
Hi, Peter. I agree with everything you're saying, and just like Tom, all of us small businessmen have seen this coming for years. I mean, in the 90s, some of my friends would look at our watches and said, "When's it going to bust?" We all knew it was going to bust. Well, I didn't read your book, but I knew that too. But the thing is, and this is going to happen before 4 years, it's going to bust again. Prices are going right up. Everything's going up 5 to 8% a year. Salaries, teacher salaries. We even got our own selectmen wanting to give raises away already. What do you think should be done right away? I mean, we just don't have enough money. We can't keep borrowing money, but it's got to be done right away. I don't think you can wait 2 years or 4 years.
I know. That's why, and even when I was going on TV and I was saying this stuff, I used to get emails from people, right, who would say, like, "You're saying exactly what I'm saying. I can't, I'm arguing with my friends. I'm glad that somebody else." So there were a lot of people around the country that understood it. I wasn't the only guy. I was just one of the only guys on television, but there were plenty of people, because I got their emails, and we know, instinctively, if you're running a business, certainly, but you can't spend more than you have. You can't go into debt forever. And, the government tries to tell us that the country, as a collectively, that it's different. That, individually, right, if you lost your job, right, what would you do? You would cut back on your spending. Right? That's what you do, right? And you try to rebuild your savings. Well, if we have to do that individually, we have to do that collectively. The government just can't, go into debt. It's like if you lose your job, you're not going to go put it in a swimming pool. I mean, that doesn't work, right? But that's what the government is trying to do. We are in debt. We borrowed all this money that we couldn't pay, right? What is the government solution? Borrow trillions more and spend that too. How is that possibly the solution? When you're deep in debt, the solution is to get out of debt. That means you got to save your money. Well, if you're saving your money, you can't spend it, right? You can't spend and save the same money. But what does the government want to do? Cash for clunkers. Give us money to go buy cars. We can't even afford the cars we have. Why are we destroying them and then going into debt to buy more? We need to drive our cars for 10 more years until the engine falls out, because we have to save our money. And the other problem is, we're not making enough. Look at all the factories in this state that are shut down. We need to open those factories back up. We need to make stuff. And initially, we have to make stuff and export it, because we're too broke to buy it. We have to sell stuff to people around the world who can actually afford to buy it, who don't need a credit card to do it, who have the savings to do it. Other people around the world save their money, like Americans used to do. Why aren't we saving our money? Because the Federal Reserve got interest rates at 0, so no one will save. And because we have a tax code that punishes anybody who saves and rewards people who borrow. We're doing it exactly backwards. So I think we all know, intuitively what needs to be done, but that no one is doing it. And what do I want to do? As I said, the first thing I want to do is not let them raise that debt ceiling. I mean, the debt ceiling is supposed to be there for a reason, right? It means you can't borrow more than this. Well, how can it be that whenever we get to the ceiling, we just raise it? It's not a ceiling if it always goes up. I want to actually make it a ceiling so that we can't go into debt. See, people think, well, let's have a balanced budget amendment. We don't need one. All we have to do is enforce the debt limit. And then the government has to cut. And they have to cut a lot. The deficit is huge. They have to make real substantive cuts in government, which is what I want. Because I don't want all this government. Right? And people are afraid, well, what if we lay off a bunch of federal workers? Well, great, because then they can get private sector jobs that will be created if we can shrink government. See, private sector jobs benefit everybody because people working in the private sector produce stuff that we want. People working in the government don't produce anything we want. In fact, most of what they produce, we don't want. And we have to pay their salaries through our taxes. Right? If your business hires somebody, it doesn't cost me a quarter. In fact, if I give you my money so that you can pay your workers, it's because I wanted to. It's because you provided a good or a service that was something I wanted, that was better than somebody else. But if the government hires somebody, I got to pay for them whether I want it or not, because they take the money in taxes. And even if they don't take it in taxes, see, a lot of Republicans who have run for office, they all want to talk about tax cuts. Yeah, that's easy. Everybody's for tax cuts. But who's for spending cuts? Because if you don't cut spending, you can't cut taxes. And if you just do one without the other, if you cut spending, cut taxes, but don't cut spending, it's a fraud. Because all you're doing is committing to future tax hikes, because not only do you have to pay for the tax cuts, but you have to pay for the interest, because then you borrow the money instead of taxing it. And of course, when the government goes out and borrows the money, where do they get it? Where are they borrowing it from? And what other use might that money have gone to if the government didn't borrow it? That's the problem. It's destroying capital. You know, when Barack Obama says, hey, the stimulus, we saved all these jobs. Look at this job. Here's an example of a guy that didn't have to fire his workers because he got some money in the stimulus. Well, what he doesn't tell you is, here's a guy that had to shut his business down because he lost capital because of the stimulus. Because the stimulus money is simply redirected. The government doesn't have it. Again, they don't have anything. All they have is what they take. They always point to who they give it to, but they don't show you who they take it from. Right? And that's the damage. They have to accept the responsibility for the unseen consequences of their action. See, most of our leaders, they don't even think that far. All they're thinking about is how it plays in the polls. They don't know what the consequences are. They're not thinking ahead about what they do. It's just the immediate, let me do this, and how does it help me in the polls? I understand all of the ramifications and all of the unseen consequences of everything the government wants to do. So the government wants to do something, like they just passed this new jobs bill. Right? I know it's not going to create any jobs, and I can explain exactly why it's not going to create any jobs. I know why it's a gimmick. I can explain exactly why. If we really want to create, I know exactly what we need to do. The problem is the politics of it. The healthcare. They have all this health. Healthcare is a problem that shouldn't be a problem. It's all created by government. Again, it's just like college tuition. Why is healthcare running out of control? Because of government policy. Because of government subsidies, mandates, because of regulation. In a free market, healthcare would be getting cheaper every single year. It would not be a problem. Just like cell phones are not a problem, or laptop computers are not a problem. The government has screwed it all up. I can fix it. If I can just write the legislation and pass it, I can fix it right away. But the problem is, they don't like the politics. They don't like the way it sounds. But you know what? It works. And that's what we need. We need to adopt solutions that work. Free market solutions to healthcare cost nothing. They don't require any higher taxes. They don't require any mandates. No one has to be required to do anything. We can just adopt these reforms, and insurance rates will drop sharply, and healthcare costs will go down. It'll happen almost immediately. That's how beautiful the free market works, if you simply let it work. The government doesn't want to. I do.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Yeah.
Just produced flyers over here. And my headquarters are in Windsor. If anybody wants to come by, we have a lot of volunteers to my campaign. I've got almost 20,000 people who have donated. I think that's more than all the other candidates that combined. So we can use donations. My website, if you want to read up on it, is www.schiffforsenate.com. Go there, look at some of these videos. Don't take my word for it that I predicted the economic crisis. Do your homework. Look at some of my videos. Pick up my book. Watch the Peter Schiff Was Right video on YouTube. Watch that mortgage bankers thing for an hour. There's all kinds of stuff. Look back and see what I said and compare it to what other people were saying. And decide if you think it would make sense to have my perspective in Washington. Because if I was in Washington 4 or 5 years ago, we wouldn't be in this mess. Okay.
Thank you very much. All right, before we go, I forgot to do the confirmation of the executive board.